Thank you very much, Dr. Zaudna. I would now open up the floor for your questions and reflections or suggestions. I would kindly ask you to introduce yourself and the media house you represent, and I would also highly recommend you to attribute your specific questions for the speaker so that they can have an easier time addressing every issue that would be raised. So the floor is yours. I would give 5 questions in the first round.
I'm a correspondent for Anadolu Agency. If I had my way, I would describe the type of governance that we have been that have been introduced to us by TPLF for the past 3 decades as colonial, as against a republic. Now, having said this, I mean, the TPLF, they came and they conquered, and this is a very familiar label when you study colonialism. And for their success towards that line, they introduced a pseudo-constitutional system whereby linguistic-based ethnic federalism came to center stage as a focus. Now my inquiry, with TPLF gone, this system, I think, too deeply entrenched and accepted by some, will continue. What should be done in the future? Should Ethiopia carry on with this linguistic-based ethnic federalism, or should it alter the focus at least to something that unify the people than divide us? I believe that is the root cause in the first place that led to all these ills that we have been forced to shoulder. Thank you.
My name is Digafi Debalki. Mine is a more technical question to the law professor. When you discussed about TPLF considering the federal government illegitimate, within that context, there are some international voices coming out and saying the only way is negotiation out of this crisis. Once the government is considered illegitimate by other side, how do you frame that negotiation framework, which once the party you have to negotiate with is considered as illegitimate?
My friend over there has raised an interesting question. But, well, you know, the Ethiopian students' movement, ever since its formation, took the direction that at the heart of Ethiopian political crisis is a failure to answer the national question. So TPLF being part and parcel of that students' movement and belonging to the core of Stalinist conviction, institutionalized the kind of federalism that you happen to talk about. But it's pretty much controversial. There are some, like a sizable element of our elite and population that espouse this kind of federalism. There are also others that disagree with this kind of federal arrangement. For example, even intellectually, it's a very interesting topic. We as a society aspire to make Ethiopia a consolidated democracy. We have, I would say, 70-year long aspiration for democracy. And as a nation, we have created enough chances for the Ethiopian state to get democratized at a very heavy cost. But all those opportunities, hard-won opportunities, happen to be missed once, for they were grabbed by some power-hungry force to its narrow interest. So one would ask, is our aspiration for a consolidated democracy in par with or compatible with this kind of federal arrangement? If you ask Horwood is an integrationist, he would say no. If you ask Chandra, like one of the greatest accommodations that one can possibly think of, he would say yes. But he's saying yes is qualified to a certain point. Is the federal arrangement institutionalized is in a flexible manner? Is it rigid or flexible? If federal arrangement, identity politics is fixated initially in a rigid manner, both Chandra and Horwood would believe that it will bring about democratic failure, if not a civil war, all the way to national disintegration. The problem, if you ask me my personal opinion, it may be different, but I'm representing the government and the party. I am the head of the election affairs of Prosperity Party. So our position is that we don't have political settlement. We never had a proper elite bargain that could have in some way helped us to reach a solid political settlement. The problem is not the kind of system we have fixated. The problem is the approach we adopted to institutionalize such kind of system. This is a serious matter. It has been on the plate in Ethiopian politics for more than a century. So if one is to pick one from the other, it has to pass through elite bargain, it has to pass through popular vote, which will then result in political settlement. So we cannot say we espouse this or not, or that. We are not ideological about anything. We don't take things as an article of faith, immune from change. We believe everything is a subject of contestation. We want to create that space that has never existed in Ethiopian politics. You know, parties that have come and going to have always come up with convictions of articles of faith, that one cannot have a debate, a dialogue, a space wherein one gives and takes. So our party, if you ask my party and my government's position, all I can say is we want to create that space where everything is brought to the table, where everyone is given the chance to debate, to contribute its share to the kind of government we want, to the kind of system that we want. And then, subject to that discussion, if a certain thing is found to be beneficial to us as a nation, then it will continue to be the case. If that's not, it can be changed. So I cannot tell you this is a bad thing, then we want to change it. It has to, we believe in dialogue, in negotiation, and in give and take. So it has to be subject to a discussion amongst political elites and the public in general. Thank you.
Thank you. You see, to give you some kind of historical perspective, you see, in 1975, when the TPLF came up with its political program, the whole issue focused on one thing, and that is the center of their political struggle is national oppression. National oppression done by one ethnic group only, the Amhara. That's what their political program states. So for 17 years, they made an armed struggle, and then in 1991, they captured state power. So they did not change their political program. By 1991, national oppression was not the issue in Ethiopia. Because if we say, in the last days of the imperial regime, we can say that there was national oppression to some extent. Okay, the number of Amhara nobility, and then representation of some ethnic groups in the political machinery is not unbalanced. But there is no a deliberate imposition of one's culture, language, religion, as they say, on other people. So when the revolution came, the implementation of the Land to the Tiller proclamation has somehow solved some issues of national oppression. So they should have reconsidered. So in 1991, they continued the same kind of political program in a newly crafted constitution. The implementation of the constitution also is somehow not very well done. So that's why ethnic conflict here and there started to occur, and some of it was nurtured by the TPLF itself, and some of it because of territorial issues, and some of it because of policy issues. So one very good example of an ethnic conflict that resulted from policy issues is the one that happened in 1999 and 1998-99. Most of the Ethiopian colleagues know that, the Wogagoda language issue. On the one hand, the government says, okay, ethnic identity must be respected. The right of the nations must be respected. And paradoxically, it comes, okay, we can craft a new instructional language that will combine 4 different languages from different ethnic groups, and then that should be a solution for the problem in the south. So in such a way, the EPRDF continued, not as such EPRDF actually, TPLF dominated EPRDF because they are a strong hegemony over the rest of the 3 parties that form the front. So at any point they did not reconsider what the repercussions of the ethnic federal structure, and then its problem, and many other related things. And then TPLF has a culture of stagnation, actually. They don't change, and they don't flinch any inch from what the top leadership thinks and wants. So the only thing that the TPLF in its history changed was in 1989, when the Eastern Bloc was shifting from socialism to liberalism because of reforms in the Soviet Union. They somehow, avoided Marxist rhetoric in their politics, and then somehow switched to a new ideology. So at some point they should have stopped and thought, evaluated, where are we going, what do the people need, and many things. That did not happen. Now, as you said, can we call them colonial rulers? In some ways, it looks like that. Why? Because when you take state power, you have to also reconsider your political program. But they didn't. They were at odds with the history of the nation. They were at odds with the interest of the people. They were at odds with the peaceful interaction of the society which prevailed for a long period of time. In that sense, yes, one can raise that, are they foreigners or Ethiopians? The problem of TPLF was that it was created non-Ethiopian and it will die non-Ethiopian. So they never thought in a way any Ethiopian should have thought. But now the TPLF is gone. But the legacy somehow will challenge the Ethiopian state, because to divide nations and nationalities, a lot has been done in the past 30 years. False narratives were created. And then conflicts that occurred in different places have their own legacy. So we can say there are several things. So one way or the other, the challenge of contemporary Ethiopia is that how to deal with the wounds that are caused by, ethnic conflicts. How much time does it take us to heal from this wound? Depends on what we do, what everyone can, what everyone does. So one cannot just throw the constitution and then come with a new constitution. So the kind of change which starts from a scratch has costed us as we see it from history. So the media and then civil society, higher education institutions, religious institutions, a concerted and an orchestrated effort from every institution, every section of society somehow can help us, to heal from that wound. But the legacy, of course, I know it challenges us and it's challenging us.
I'm not going to address what my colleagues have said earlier on. I will go back to the question of quote-unquote negotiation in terms of addressing legal questions. I do believe that questions of legality should be addressed by laws. The first challenge raised by TPLF has to do with the constitutional interpretation, to the best of my recollection. Any constitutional query or request need to be addressed by that very constitution, and I was also involved by contributing a paper to that. And if you disregard provisions, constitutional provisions, it unquestionably leads you to lawlessness. This is what we are observing today. The TPLF wanted to show force, to be very vocal, and presume that it's more loyal to the constitution than any Ethiopian citizenry. That, I hate to call it, that exceptionalism probably has led that leadership to go off track. So the question that was raised is, in order to resolve any misunderstanding, yes, negotiation is a good tool, but not at the cost of disregard to the established law and order. To my understanding, the federal government is saying that there are perpetrators amongst the TPLF leadership, and the cases are being handled by the Ethiopian courts of law. And please, permit me to exercise my federal jurisdiction to bring them to justice. The Tigray leadership said no to it. And the government or the prosecution ended up continuing the proceedings without their coming to law. And this is not for a day, this is not for a month, this is for more than 2 years. And then that same regime said that no to the constitution and no to the laws of the land. It's not only saying no to the laws of the land, even went to the level to attack the National Defense Forces designed and created to protect the unity of the country, to protect the constitution that was authored mainly by the TPLF regime. So there were the paradoxes. Now we are hearing from various corners that well, still there is a room for mediation and negotiation. I don't think the government say no to it, provided that these few individuals where the law is fingering out are brought to justice. The rest is 100% on the tip of the fingers of both the federal government and even the other leadership of TPLF. This is not a war against the Tigrayan people. This is an armed conflict dictated and imposed by the other side on the federal government. So, unless they are carefully handled, I would say the call for negotiation is also misleading by eroding the principle of no to impunity, no to lawlessness. So that's why certain discussions are going here and there, that some people want to mediate and so forth, and the government has said no to it, as long as 1, 2, 3, or call them 100 or 50 people are brought to justice. If we don't do that, believe me, we have a very fragile community in Ethiopia, and lawlessness shall prevail and will continue until we end up seeing a disintegrated community in this country. So in short, the law shall prevail. The law enforcement organ has acted so belatedly, and we have to continue that way. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your elaboration. It was very much enlightening. My name is Andu Alam Sisa. I work for Nation Media Group and New Business Ethiopia. I have two questions. One of you can reflect on it. The first one is, as we have seen from the government media, that in 3 weeks' time, almost now, the army is close to Mekele, liberating many big towns. How come this happens when we say that TPLF has been preparing for the past 2 years with heavy artilleries, and those after holding even those heavy artilleries? Is there anything that you can tell us, if it's army power or if it's the resistance of the people of Tigray? The other issue is the way forward. What shall we expect after this conflict? Would there be some groups who might turn into another round of rebel group fighting? Because TPLF during its power has a lot of contacts from Somaliland to Djibouti to Sudan. So some say it's very likely that there will be another burst for a small group of junta or whatever we call it. Would that be a scenario, or shall we expect a peaceful end to this?
What do you mean by another? Are you talking about TPLF turning itself into a guerrilla?
Yes, another guerrilla fight. A group organize themselves and come with a different name or a different idea, but still with arms resistance. Thank you so much.
Reflect on the two questions.
So the gentleman is asking why the operation is being wrapped up at a rapid rate within 21 days so far. Given the kind of preparation TPLF exhibited towards the resistance, the movement to the reform. You know, at the core of any movement, what makes any movement powerful and to extend itself over time is the cause. If you have a right cause, if you have a powerful cause, you can rally people around it so that you can triumph. You can inject a sense of life to the cause and the leverage so that it can be on the air over time. What is TPLF's cause? It is saying no to equality. It is so used to privilege that equality, TPLF is taking equality as a punishment, as an oppression. What kind of privilege? Is it a privilege shared amongst the ordinary Tigrayans that amount to 6 or 7 million of them? That is not. This is a privilege that was shared among the clique's closest allies, families. So the TPLF cause cannot rally the Tigrayan people. TPLF cause cannot rally the entire TPLF rank and file. So from the get-go, it is doomed to fail. It is doomed to be dashed into pieces. For they don't have a just cause to rally around. What would Tigrayan people lose out of a democratic Ethiopia? What do they have to lose out of a country wherein equality is the rule of the day? Nothing. Equality can only be a punishment to those who were so used to a privilege of that sort. Getachew Asafa was undeservingly head of the national intelligence. He is ousted now. So he must be nostalgic of that all day, wherein his word was the emperor's word. His word was taken for something higher than the proclamation of the proclamations that are issued by the HPR, House of People's Representatives. So one can be, Getachew Asafa can be nostalgic about it. He may fight hard to bring the old days back, but not the entire Tigrayan people. That cannot be, not even the whole Tigrayan elite. So why it is short? Why it is not? Why TPLF is not putting up a challenge that can be matched by the kind of preparation it bestowed upon to its resistance movement is the cause. Even for us, 21 days is long. We could have wrapped up this operation in few days. Where are we taking? We are still trying to give peace a chance. We've given them 2 or 3 times a chance to surrender. Some are taking advantage of it. Many of the special forces, the special police and the militias are surrendering. So these are Ethiopians. We are not going to resort to war. We are not going to shoot them unless it is shoot at them unless it is a last resort. So this is making us take time. The other thing is this is a precision and surgical operation. We are taking maximum caution with a view to avoiding civilian casualty, which is proven to be a successful one. So since we cannot shoot randomly, or we cannot shoot at our pleasure. Since we are taking painstaking measure with a view to avoid civilian casualty, then it is taking this much time. It is not the kind of challenge that TPLF is putting up, that we are forced to take up an operation of 21 days long. It is not at all. It's the kind of care we want to take, because Tigrayan people are Ethiopian people. We don't want this conflict we don't want the post-TPLF Tigray in Ethiopia to be a conflict-ridden one. We want to avoid civilian casualty so that we will not be left with many wounds to heal. That's at the core of it. Otherwise, the kind of military resistance TPLF is putting up is very rudimentary, that we could have dashed them into pieces in a matter of few days. But if it were not for the kind of care we are taking. As to your prediction of a scenario that would arise out of this after TPLF, will TPLF change itself to its old tactic, which is a guerrilla fight? I don't think that would be the case, because, you know, the reason why TPLF prevailed in guerrilla fighting was due to the global politics. At that time, there was this North-South divide. There was this communist bloc and the capitalist bloc, which was led by the West. You know, that dichotomy of the world into such two big blocks enabled TPLF to profit out of it. It kind of gave a safe haven with the logistical support for TPLF to mushroom, then at the end of the day to triumph. If you see elsewhere in Africa, the armed resistance, guerrilla fighting is not the fashion of the day, nor is it the rule of the day. You don't see forces that go to the bush, fight all the way to the capital city. That is not the case, because the whole global context is changing. Even Ethiopia's situation is changing. It is not, you know, you don't find a safe haven like David. The government's reach was limited by technology, by logistical facility, and whatnot. Now things have changed. There is no dichotomy of the world of that kind. You can't benefit a lot by siding yourself with one against the other. To borrow the words of Friedman, the world is flat. And governments' reach globally towards their citizens has been multiplied due to technological effect, due to innovation. So TPLF may want to resort to its old tactic, old habits die hard, but it cannot continue to survive as a political movement through this old tactic, leave alone to triumph. So the government is aware of TPLF's strategy, TPLF aspiration, but we have very swift strategy put in place to make sure that TPLF does not succeed in doing so. It may attempt to do so. It may resort to its old tactic, but we have a strategy put in place to make sure that this gets aborted. That's what I can say.
Thank you. Extend our thanks to our speakers here today, and for you, the international media correspondents here attending the discussion today. I believe and I hope that the discussion today gave you holistic perspective and content on the situations that are going on, and also political and historical background of TPLF and the situations and the law enforcement mission that has been undertaken by the federal government. I know you all have prior engagements to attend and you have deadlines to meet, so we truly appreciate your time here today with us. Thank you all very much again, the speakers and all of you here. Have a wonderful evening. I hope we'll see each other again soon. Good evening.